Michigan 13-0, okay. Florida State, they went out. Alabama 12-1. Oregon 12-1, which means they'd upset Washington. Texas 12-1, they went out. Georgia, they lose to Bama. Washington loses to Oregon, and Ohio State loses to Michigan. All right, so let's look at this. Who gets in if this happens? All right, man, look, I told y'all 2 weeks ago in a video that I wouldn't be talking about all the crazy and chaotic college football playoff scenarios that could play out if this, and this happens, because I stated, it's on record, it's documented on the channel, that I don't believe there's going to be a lot of chaos because everything's going to play itself out. I stated that we've seen this story before and it happens every single year. We're heading into the last 3 or 4 weeks of the regular season and there's about 6, 7, 8 teams that got a legit shot of making the Final Four. But then what happens? A couple of these teams that had a great shot of making the Final Four, they lose to teams they shouldn't. And like I said, everything solves itself out, or not solves itself, but plays itself out. You get what I'm trying to say. And well, here we are. We're talking about this because I also stated in that video, if you saw, you know what I'm talking about. If these teams don't lose and we're in the final week of the regular season and you still got about 7, 8 teams that got a legit shot for this playoff, we'll make an entirely separate video. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is it. We're no longer 3 weeks away from the final game. No. It's here. This is the final regular season game of the year. We got this game in championship week, and that's it. And guess what? Nobody in the past couple weeks, in the top 8 at least, have lost. And you got fans all over the country mad about this, especially Bama fans, because while they've been stuck at number 8, they have impressive wins over Tennessee and LSU. Alabama completely dominated in that game, and they didn't go up any. But it goes back to this. Nothing's happened. No chaos has ensued, and that is rare for this sport. I do want to throw this in there. I am holding on to some hope of some big-time teams like maybe Texas, or who knows, maybe Florida State losing this weekend, so watch out for that. I have a hard time believing we don't see at least one upset in the top 8. And hey, who knows? The Iron Bowl in Alabama, that's not a free win. We all know Auburn's going to give Bama their best shot. But in today's video, I want to talk about some of these crazy, I mean absolute crazy college football playoff scenarios that could happen. And I'm starting to lean towards the side of this has a great chance of happening. We're going to talk all about that in today's video. And also, I'm going to show you my new and improved top 10. I know it's Wednesday. I haven't shown you my top 10. However, if you want early access to this, I released this Saturday night after all the games on Twitter. I guess you could say these are 2 separate topics, but I just think it's one big topic. It all goes hand in hand. As always, if you're new to the channel and you like college football content, consider subscribing. We'd love to have you here. But all right, Matt, blah, blah, blah. Shut the crap up. Now, without further ado, let's get into it. All right, first things first, before we take a look at some of these chaotic playoff scenarios, let me show you my top 10, and I will explain my reasoning for this. My top 10, unlike the committees, has switched up a lot. 10 and 9, no switch up there. Louisville, Missouri, they don't matter. They're irrelevant. They're not making the playoff. At number 8, as you can see right here, Florida State. Yep, I dropped them, and it's relatively simple. I dropped them because yeah, the quarterback injury, Jordan Travis. He's out for the year, and it comes down to this for me. If I had to pick tomorrow, I would not pick Florida State to beat Texas, Oregon, Washington, or Alabama. Therefore, I dropped them. The way I do my rankings are relatively simple, especially when it comes to the top 10. If I don't think, for example, Florida State can't beat Texas, I'm not going to rank Florida State ahead of Texas. I get it, they're undefeated. They probably deserve to be ranked ahead of Texas, but that's not how I do my rankings. I rank them by the best teams. With that being said, speaking of Texas, I have jumped them up to number 7 in my rankings. Previously, I had them at 8, and they go up ahead of Florida State. At number 6, right above Texas, I have de-ranked Oregon, and that shocked a lot of people, especially on Twitter, because like, wait a minute, Matt, they're coming off a big win. Why would you drop them? They didn't do anything bad, and it has nothing to do with Oregon. It has everything to do with, I bumped up Washington, as you can see, to number 5, but also Oregon's wins. Remember that win they had against Utah? They beat them 35-6, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. Well, it just continues to look worse and worse and worse. And now you look at it, Oregon doesn't have a ranked win this year. That's why I've dropped Oregon this week, because now their win against Utah, it's not as good as I originally thought it was. And like I stated, I can't emphasize this enough, Oregon does not have a ranked win. I like Oregon. I think they're a really good football team, but I think Washington is better than them, and that's why I jumped them up. Ahead of Washington, this is going to be controversial, but I have jumped up Alabama. Before this, I had them at 6. I had Florida State and Oregon ahead of Bama, but as you can see, I dropped Florida State and Oregon, so Bama goes up. It goes back to this, and I know what everybody's going to say. Well, Matt, Texas beat Alabama. Matt, Washington's undefeated, blah, blah, blah. Shut up. My rankings are simple. I base them off of who I think would win tomorrow, and I'm picking Alabama to beat Washington, Oregon, Texas, and Florida State. Simple as that. Alabama is hitting their strides, and whether you want to believe this or not, they are one of the very few teams that can even compete with Georgia currently. And it's the reason everybody's reluctant to give Alabama the respect they deserve this year, because deep down, everybody's scared of them. It is what it is, and my top 3, as you can see, have not changed. No reason to change them. Let's check on the comment section, though. Haven't even looked at it, saving it for this video. TJ says, got over 20 likes. Matt, I understand why you have Alabama over Texas, but you beat Chattanooga, bro. That was expected. I'm still going head-to-head with the Texas-Alabama conversation. Well, Alabama beating Chattanooga has nothing to do with me ranking them at number 4. It has everything to do with Alabama's hitting their strides, and ever since that Week 2 game, Bama has looked like the better football team. I'm not trying to sit up here and convince you that that Week 2 game between Texas and Alabama didn't matter, because no, it matters a ton. But to me at least, Alabama over the past several weeks, they've just gotten better and better, and Texas has not. And to be honest, I don't even know why you're bringing up the Alabama and Texas argument, because in my rankings, they're not even close. I could understand it if I had Alabama at 4 and Texas at 5, but I have Alabama at 4 and Texas at 7. You should be worried about Oregon and Washington in my rankings before you worry about Alabama. Yet again, it seems like everybody just keeps up bringing, yo, Matt, I can't believe you're jumping up Alabama because they beat Chattanooga State Water Aquarium and Community College. Look, it has nothing to do with Chattanooga. Why are y'all bringing that up? Y'all gotta be smarter than that. Come on, man. It has everything to do with Florida State lost their quarterback, okay, and Oregon's wins no longer look that good. That's my reason for these rankings. If you don't like them, well, here's the great part about our channel and our community. You don't gotta like them, and I don't expect every single one of you to agree with them, because you're entitled to your own opinion. That's what makes our community so great. It's different opinions. If we all agreed on everything, it wouldn't be too much of a community. So with that being said, I'm curious. Let me know in the comment section. What's your top 10, top 4, top 6 looking like? Getting that out the way, though, and moving along here to the main topic of main encore, the main reason you clicked onto this video, we got to check out some of these crazy college football playoff scenarios. I've seen so many of these on Twitter. People send it to me, but I'm just going to run through a couple that intrigue me, or some of them that I've saved. This right here says Georgia, 12-1, loses to Alabama. Okay. Ohio State loses to Michigan. Michigan beats Ohio State, but loses to Iowa. Alabama, they went out. They win the SEC championship. Texas wins out. Florida State loses to Louisville. Louisville wins out, so they're the ACC champ. Washington, 12-1, loses to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, and Oregon wins out, and they win the championship. Well, for starters, let's just throw this out there right now. If Ohio State loses to Michigan, there's not even a shot in the dark they get in. There's no way you put in an 11-1 Ohio State over a 12-1 Georgia. That just won't happen. So you can mark out Ohio State right there. And you can also mark out Florida State. They're not getting in if they lose to Louisville. Heck, you know we've already talked about this. They might not even get in if they win out. We'll get to that in just a second. That's a really interesting conversation. Also, if Washington loses to Oregon in the Pac-12 championship, they won't get in either. So if this scenario does happen, you're probably getting Alabama in, Oregon, they won the Pac-12 championship, they'll get in. Texas, of course, if Bama's getting in, Texas is getting in. And I would say at that 4th spot, Georgia would probably sneak in, right? Because you got to look at it from this standpoint. It'd be narrowed down to Georgia and Michigan, because both of them finished 12-0 but lost their conference championship games. And I think the committee's going to look at this. Well, look who Georgia lost to, Bama, and look who Michigan lost to, Iowa. I would assume the committee would give the nod to Georgia just because their strength of schedule has been better this year, and it's a way better look to lose to Alabama than freaking Iowa. I mean, come on, man. It's Iowa. And a lot of people in the comment section are agreeing it'd be Alabama, Oregon, Texas, Georgia. But let's take a look at some others here. Oh, yeah, I got to bring this up. I said I'd talk about it a little in this video. Remember, Desmond Howard and Kirk Herbstreit both stated an undefeated Florida State would be left out, or should be left out, if Alabama beats Georgia and runs the table. Desmond Howard stated in this scenario, both Alabama and Texas should get in. Of course, you got the winner of the Ohio State-Michigan game getting in, and Washington get in. And undefeated cinnamon rolls, they get left out. What about that? That would be straight chaos. And the funny thing is everybody agrees with this. Everybody's in the same boat. Every single person out here is saying, yep, right now, Alabama is a better team than Florida State. However, they don't believe the committee will leave out an undefeated Florida State, and that's how I feel. And it's a weird argument because what is their motto? What is their mantra? We want the 4 best teams regardless of record. But they're hypocrites. They don't follow those guidelines, because if you wanted the 4 best teams, you wouldn't have put TCU in last year. That's all I needed to see. When they put in TCU last year over Alabama, I was like, yep. They want the 4 most deserving teams, not the 4 best teams. And it sucks because Alabama should get in over an undefeated Florida State because they'd have the better team. They got the better quarterback, but Undefeated Florida State, they're not going to be left out. End of conversation. But let's check out what ESPN put up. This was a chaos scenario somebody sent me on Twitter. It's got over like 750,000 views. Michigan 13-0, okay. Florida State, they went out. Alabama 12-1. Oregon 12-1, which means they'd upset Washington. Texas 12-1, they went out. Georgia, they lose to Bama. Washington loses to Oregon. And Ohio State loses to Michigan. All right, so let's look at this. Who gets in if this happens? In no particular order, let's just get the obvious out there. Michigan's getting in. They're 13-0. They're getting in. They beat Ohio State. They're getting in. And also, I would say Texas, they went out. They're getting in. So those two are locked, Michigan and Texas. Well, since Oregon, and it's just going off the committee, not how I believe or feel, if Oregon wins out and they're already 2 spots ahead of Bama, I would assume they're getting in, especially with a win over Washington, right? So that's 3, and it looks like that last spot would come down to Alabama and Florida State, like we've talked about. Because there's no way they would consider putting in Georgia over Alabama if they're both 12-1 and Bama just beat them head-to-head. And man, it goes back to this. Does the committee have big enough kahunas to put in 12-1 Bama, who is better than Florida State over undefeated Florida State? I don't know. Well, I don't know why I said I don't know. I do know. I don't believe they have big enough kahunas to do it. Who do you think should get in? You know what? Let me tell you who I think should get in if this happens. My number 1 seed would be Michigan, of course. Because Georgia lost to Alabama, so Georgia won't be number 1 anymore. Ohio State loses. Michigan's number 1. Number 2, you know what? It depends how they look, but let's just assume Oregon looks a little better. I'd put Oregon at number 2 there. And number 3, and it also depends how they look, I'd probably put Texas there. Let's assume they look really good in these next 2 weeks. And at number 4, I'd have it coming down to Alabama and Florida State. I'd put in Alabama. That would be my top 4. Michigan, number 1, 2, Oregon, 3, Texas, and 4, Alabama. And man, oh man, I just thought about this, guys. That would line up for one heck of a rematch in the national championship if they win. 3 Texas versus number 4 Alabama. Whew, that would be a game, but you know, a lot of what ifs would have to happen. Let's check out this comment section, though, see what some of these people got to say. This comment got a lot of likes. Reward Conference Championships. Michigan and FSU get in, no doubt, undefeated, 1-2. Oregon got revenge on their only loss and won their conference, 3rd, so they're saying Oregon gets in at 3. Texas beat Bama. Texas slips by in head-to-head advantage, 4th. So they got 1 Michigan, 4 Texas, 2 FSU, 3 Oregon. I'm not too mad about that. I'm really not, because I do think you would have to probably award Texas for that head-to-head. I can sit up here all day and tell you I think Alabama's a better team than Texas, but they beat them by 10 points on the road in the home stadium. You got to give the edge to Texas, don't you? I think at the end of the day, you got to give them the edge because there's a reason we play the games. They beat them. It don't matter if it was in week 2 or week 10. Alabama beat Texas. Texas beat Alabama, my apologies, by 10+ points. Somebody in the comments said they're just trying to find a way to get Bama in again. And hey, man, you know somehow, someway, Alabama's going to sneak into this thing. Don't even worry about it. I think that's low-key why they decided to expand the playoff to 12 teams, because they know Saban's on his last leg, and they're like, well, since Alabama's not as dominant anymore, we need to open up the playing field so they can get in with potentially 4 losses in the future. Let's check on this one here. I had a couple people sending this to me. Nightmare CFP scenario. Bama beats Georgia, duh. Texas wins Big 12. Oregon beats Washington, but here's the kicker here. Michigan beats Ohio State, and Florida State loses to Louisville. Well, to me, I don't think it's really a nightmare CFP scenario. I think it's relatively simple. That'd be the best case scenario, wouldn't it? Because there's no way Louisville is jumping ahead of Alabama or Texas. There's just no way. I mean, come on now. What are we talking about? I can't believe people are saying this to me. This is the easiest one. If you think the committee would put Louisville ahead of Alabama or Texas, I don't know what to tell you. Louisville could beat Florida State by 45 points. They're still not getting in over Bama. Simple as that, man. Simple as that. But just now, somebody tagged me in this. So let's take a look at this. Last thing we'll speak on in this video. Playoff committee. We rather you have a good loss with no significant wins and blowout cupcake teams than have 3 wins over top 25 teams and decent loss with a strength of schedule in the top 10. This person's referring to this graphic right here, and I agree. I've been saying this for the past couple of weeks. Why is Oregon ranked ahead of not just Texas, but Alabama too? Oregon doesn't have a top 25 win. Think about it. Alabama has 3 top 25 wins. Texas has 2. And look at this. You see it. Texas has a better strength of record and strength of schedule. It's not even close in the strength of schedule. But yet, for some odd reason, Oregon is ranked ahead of Texas. And here's my problem with this, because you can't even say, oh, well, Oregon is the better team. Well, no. If you're going off of that logic, then Alabama should be ranked ahead of Texas. You see what I'm saying? The committee is a bunch of hypocrites. They've been really hypocritical this year. It's the same argument I said for having Ohio State ahead of Georgia. It made no sense. Why did the committee have Ohio State ahead of Georgia? What do they harp on? Strength of record, strength of schedule. Okay, that's fine. That's all fine and dandy. But here's where the problem arises. If strength of record and strength of schedule is the reason you have Ohio State ahead of Georgia, then that same logic has to apply to Texas and Oregon, right? But here's the problem, guys, and it just infuriates me because they're hypocritical. It doesn't apply here. They've just thrown it out the window. They're not applying their own principles and logic to the Texas and Oregon debate. The more you look at it, the more it will frustrate you because it doesn't make any sense. Hopefully all this settles itself out, and hopefully we see some chaos happen this weekend because I'm looking forward to it. I can't wait. Oh yeah, tomorrow's Thanksgiving, so I hope all of you have a great and fantastic Thanksgiving. Watch some football, eat a lot of food, do whatever you want to do. Just hope you enjoy your time, but let me know your thoughts on this down below. But